8 years of planning. A folder stuffed with Zillow screenshots, a retirement countdown on the refrigerator door. Carol and Dennis Marsh, retired teachers from Hauppauge, New York, had done everything right. They had visited Boynton Beach 3 times. They knew which streets flooded in August and which homeowners associations allowed dogs. In January of 2025, they finally requested a Redfin tour of a 1,900 square foot home listed at $387,000. They had watched its Zillow estimate tick upward for 3 straight years, certain they were buying at exactly the right moment. 2 days later, they got their homeowners' insurance quotes back. $18,400 per year. We did not stop wanting Florida, Carol said. We stopped being able to afford that part of it. They are not an anomaly. They are the data made human. Redfin's 2025 net inflow report quietly buried a number that should have made headlines. Palm Beach County dropped from a top 5 Florida destination for interstate relocators to outside the top 12 in a single reporting cycle. For a county that was long the default answer to where in Florida to retire, that is not a slump. It is a redirection of the entire current. So where did Carol and Dennis actually go? That answer is coming. Is this a temporary stall or something structural that has permanently rewired Florida's migration map, and which 10 specific towns are now absorbing every buyer Palm Beach County is losing? To understand where they went, you first have to understand exactly what broke. And it was not just one thing, it was 3 numbers. Picture a retired nurse named Patricia Holden sitting at her kitchen table in Delray Beach in the spring of 2024. She had bought her 2-bedroom condo in 1998 for $142,000. She loved it. Then 3 envelopes arrived within the same month. The first was her Citizens Property Insurance renewal, $6,200. Manageable, she thought, until her building's insurer dropped coastal coverage entirely and the private market replacement quote came back at $14,800. The second was her property tax bill. Palm Beach County's effective rate of just over 1% applied to her unit's newly assessed value of $390,000. That is more than $4,000 a year before exemptions. Florida was supposed to be the cheap state. The third envelope was the one that broke her. A special assessment notice from her condo association, $41,000 due within 18 months. Triggered by the milestone inspection mandate that followed the Surfside building tragedy, hitting buildings constructed before 1992. Hers was built in 1987. On Zillow, her unit's estimate had quietly flattened that same year, even as the assessment letter demanded tens of thousands she did not have. The value was not rising fast enough to borrow against, and on Redfin, comparable units in her building were sitting for months, repriced again and again, because every buyer asked the same question. What is the assessment, and is another one coming? That stack, insurance, taxes, and assessment, totaled more than $60,000 in a single year. Now consider a buyer entering today at Palm Beach County's median home value of $612,000. Their annual carrying costs beyond the mortgage. Property taxes near $6,500. Insurance running $14,000 to $22,000 in the coastal zip codes, and the looming shadow of assessment exposure in any older building. Conservatively, $30,000 to $45,000 per year. Before a single mortgage payment, the national median household income is roughly $80,000. The math does not close. It does not even come close. And here is the quiet detail Zillow's own data reveals. Even as those carrying costs exploded, the typical Palm Beach County home value had largely stalled near $612,000, drifting sideways while the cost of holding it climbed in a straight line. Buyers were being asked to pay more every year to own an asset that had stopped paying them back. So the buyers did not leave Florida, they left Palm Beach County. That distinction is the entire story, and it is the thing the headlines keep missing. And when Redfin tracked where they went, the pattern was not random. It was a gradient. Here's how the data works. Redfin monitors which users searched Palm Beach County listings, then ultimately purchased somewhere else. Cross-reference that with the federal county-to-county income flow data, the most recent of which covers the 2023 tax year, and 3 distinct migration corridors emerge with striking clarity. North along Interstate 95 and the Florida Turnpike, towards St. Lucie, Indian River, and Brevard counties, inland toward Polk and Highlands counties, and northwest, curving towards Sarasota and Charlotte. Think of it as a topographical map, but instead of elevation, you are reading affordability. Every 30 miles you travel along any one of those corridors, median home prices drop roughly $80,000 to $120,000. Insurance premiums, according to zip code level data from Florida's Office of Insurance Regulation, fall another $3,000 to $6,000 annually. The further you move from the coast, the more the math starts to breathe again. Layer Zillow's home value index over that same map, and the gradient turns to color, a band of deep, expensive red hugging the Palm Beach coast, cooling to affordable green the moment you cross into St. Lucie or push inland toward Polk. Every town the searchers fled toward shared one trait on Zillow's index, a value still low enough that the monthly math actually worked. Carol and Dennis Marsh felt that gradient before they could name it, somewhere past the point where the quote stopped being terrifying, where a version of Florida still made sense. Here are the 10 towns sitting along that gradient, ranked not by hype, but by the data. The first 3 towns sit closest to Palm Beach County, close enough that some buyers never fully feel like they have left. Port St. Lucie was Redfin's most searched Florida city among former Palm Beach County users in the first quarter of 2025. Not Lakeland, not Ocala. Port St. Lucie, the median sale price is $385,000. That is $227,000 less than Palm Beach County's median, enough to wipe out private mortgage insurance and still leave cash to spare. Martin Guerrero, who is 64, a former Boca Raton renter, understood that math viscerally. He had been quoted $19,200 per year to insure a comparable Boca home. He bought in Port St. Lucie's Tradition neighborhood for $362,000 cash, with Citizens Insurance running $4,100 annually. I stopped doing the math, he said, because it finally started working. National builders are putting up homes fast in Tradition and Torino because demand has outrun resale supply. The commute to West Palm Beach runs about 55 minutes, long but manageable for someone who only goes back occasionally. Zillow's home value index for Port St. Lucie has climbed to roughly $390,000 after years of steady gains, yet it still sits more than $200,000 under the Palm Beach County figure, which is exactly the gap these buyers are chasing. Stewart is smaller, more historic, and slightly more expensive at a median of $430,000. But here is the number that stops analysts cold. The federal tax data recorded a $312 million adjusted gross income transfer from Palm Beach County into Martin County in 2023 alone, the single largest county pair income transfer in Florida's data set. That is capital relocating permanently. Zillow pegs the typical Stewart home near $440,000 and still climbing, the statistical fingerprint of exactly the wealthy, deliberate buyers that federal transfer describes. Vero Beach rounds out the corridor with a median of $410,000 and a third-place ranking in Florida for quality of life in a national survey in 2024. The buyer profile skews older, cash-heavy, unhurried. Quiet by design. On Zillow, Vero Beach values have appreciated into the low $410,000 range on a slow, durable curve, the kind of steady climb retirees actually want to see sitting under their largest asset. But those 3 towns are still close enough to feel familiar. Some buyers are going much further and finding something completely unexpected. Lakeland sits 65 miles from Palm Beach County's coastline, close enough to reach in a single tank of gas, far enough that the insurance math transforms completely. Polk County's largest city carries a median home price of $299,000. Annual insurance averages $3,200, less than one-fifth of what coastal Palm Beach buyers face. That differential is real money, $10,000 to $18,000 back in someone's pocket every single year. And Lakeland is not the sleepy interior town it was a decade ago. A $125 million investment created Bonnet Springs Park, a 168-acre green space that opened in 2023 and immediately gave the city a lifestyle argument it could not have made 5 years earlier. Florida Polytechnic University is pulling in younger buyers alongside retirees, and the population grew 4.1% year over year, according to Census estimates. That is not a coincidence. That is momentum. Zillow's index shows Lakeland values pushing past $300,000 with healthy year-over-year growth, and Redfin's search traffic confirms it is pulling browsers off both coasts at once. Then there is Sebring. Most Floridians could not find it on a map without help. The federal data suggests they should learn. Between 2022 and 2023, Palm Beach County inflow into Highlands County accelerated 34%. Not 34% of total migration volume, 34% growth in a single year. A town most people overlook is quietly filling up with people who used to overlook it too. The median price is $215,000 with insurance at $2,800 annually. The honest catch? Highlands Regional Medical Center is the only acute care facility in the county. For a buyer 65 and older managing a chronic condition, that is not a footnote. It is a deal breaker. Zillow's typical value here still sits around $215,000, and on Redfin, the few homes that do list are spending fewer days on the market than they did a year ago, a quiet signal the overlooked town is being discovered. If Sebring forces a healthcare trade-off, Avon Park asks for something harder: lifestyle. The median is $178,000. Insurance runs $2,400 per year. There is zero condo assessment exposure. For investors and budget-constrained retirees, those numbers are extraordinary. But limited dining, limited retail, and slower appreciation mean not every Palm Beach County refugee is willing to make that exchange. Zillow's index for Avon Park barely cracks $180,000, the lowest entry on this entire map, and that single number is doing most of the persuading. What is your line? Drop it in the comments. What trade-off would you actually accept to get the insurance costs under control? The inland towns offer the best prices on this entire map, but a third group of buyers went a completely different direction northwest toward the Gulf. Sarasota does not feel like a compromise. That is the first thing buyers say when they arrive. The median price is $510,000, still below Palm Beach County. But carrying something Palm Beach cannot always claim, a cultural infrastructure that makes the trade-off feel like a lateral move, not a retreat. The Ringling Museum, Sarasota Opera, 35 miles of Gulf-facing beach. Redfin's 2024 data shows Palm Beach County was the #2 origin market for Sarasota buyers. These people were not fleeing. They were redirecting deliberately with spreadsheets. Insurance averages $7,100 annually here. Higher than Lakeland, yes, but $7,000 to $15,000 less than coastal Palm Beach zip codes. The math still breathes. The warning, though: Sarasota is 2 years behind Palm Beach County on the affordability curve, not immune from it. Buyers arriving today may be buying into the same ceiling they just escaped. You can already see it on Zillow, where Sarasota's home value index has begun to flatten near the $500,000 mark after its long run-up. The early warning that the cushion between Sarasota and the coast it is supposed to relieve is thinning fast. Port Charlotte sits an hour south. Charlotte County's median is $310,000. Insurance runs $4,900 per year. The Peace River waterfront gives it a genuine boating lifestyle, not a brochure argument. One caveat that no data set can soften. Hurricane Ian's path in 2022 cut directly through here. Some neighborhoods still carry visible scar tissue. Flood history research is not optional in Charlotte County. It is the first conversation. Zillow puts the typical Port Charlotte home around $310,000, and Redfin's closing data shows a steady stream of buyers willing to accept the storm risk in exchange for that price. Every town worth buying into and every town worth steering clear of in this state is now gathered in one place. 40 Florida towns, 20 rated to buy and 20 rated to avoid, all in a single guide called the Florida Buy and Avoid List for 2026. Instead of stitching the picture together yourself from a dozen scattered sources, it is all consolidated for you and you can reach it through the link in the description below. Then there is Punta Gorda, and this is where the data does something unexpected. The federal income flow records show incoming households to Punta Gorda carry a median adjusted gross income of $94,000. The county average is $61,000. These are not desperate refugees from Palm Beach County's cost crisis. They are strategic relocators, people who ran the numbers, chose the walkable historic downtown, booked flights out of Punta Gorda Airport to more than 40 cities, and decided this was the smartest trade available. Zillow's index for Punta Gorda has actually cooled from its pandemic peak. And for these high-income arrivals, that is not a warning, it is the appeal. They are buying into a town the market has already discounted for them. 9 towns, 9 different versions of the same calculation, but the 10th town breaks the pattern entirely, and it might be the most revealing data point on this entire map. Ocala was not on anyone's radar 5 years ago. Now it is the most interesting number in the entire data set. Marion County's median home price sits at $269,000. Annual insurance averages $3,100. And the federal county-to-county flow data shows Palm Beach County inflow into Marion County tripled between 2021 and 2023, not doubled. Tripled. What changed? The World Equestrian Center opened in 2021, a $1 billion development that handed Ocala something inland Florida towns almost never get: a luxury identity. Horse farms, championship arenas, high-end resort amenities. Suddenly affordable no longer meant settling. Builders noticed immediately. More than 4,200 construction permits were pulled in Marion County in 2024 alone. Zillow's home value index for Ocala has been among the fastest climbing in the state, and Redfin's search data shows out of county browsers arriving in numbers Marion County has never recorded before. But here is the part almost nobody is talking about. Ocala sits in a flood zone buffer that is quietly shifting as the federal government updates its flood insurance rate maps. Some of those new builds are going up in areas that climate modeling suggests will face insurance reclassification by 2027 or 2028. Buyers are purchasing at today's premiums, potentially inheriting tomorrow's. If you track where Florida's risk is migrating before it becomes a headline, subscribe to see these numbers before the market does. So what is your read on Ocala? Would you buy there knowing the reclassification is coming? Which brings us back to Carol and Dennis and what their choice actually tells us about where all of this is going. They closed on the 14th of March, 2025, a 3-bedroom, 2-bath home in tradition, the same Port St. Lucie neighborhood where Martin Guerrero had done his own math 6 months earlier. The purchase price was $371,000. Annual insurance, $4,200. Property taxes, $3,950. Total carrying costs beyond the mortgage, $8,150 per year. In Boynton Beach, that number was $32,000 and climbing. Dennis put it simply, we did not settle. We just stopped paying for a zip code. That sentence is the whole story. This video was never really about Palm Beach County losing. It was about what happens when a place prices out the people who built its culture, the teachers, the middle managers, the modestly retired, the people who did everything right only to find the finish line had moved somewhere they could not follow. The 10 towns on this map are not consolation prizes. They are the next chapter of Florida's growth story, absorbing the human capital that coastal South Florida spent years pricing out. You can already watch it happening on Zillow, where the value lines for these 10 towns bend upward while Palm Beach County's flattens, the statistical shadow of every Carol and Dennis who quietly redrew their own map. But here is the honest caveat. Every town profiled here costs more today than it did 24 months ago. The affordability window is open, but it is not standing still. If you want to know which town hits its own ceiling next, subscribe before the next insurance quote lands. So the real question is not where Palm Beach County's buyers went. It is how long before they cannot afford where they landed either. A final word on the data. Redfin's migration data tracks users who searched one metro, then bought in another, though its users skew higher income, so keep that bias in mind. Zillow's Home Value Index is the scoreboard, tracking what actually happened to prices in each town month over month, and across all 10, it points the same direction the buyers are walking, upward. The federal county-to-county tax data captures completed moves, the gold standard, even if it lags about 18 months behind. When all three point at the same towns as they do here, the signal is not noise, it is convergence. What none of them can measure is whether Carol and Dennis love their street, whether the neighbors wave, whether the sunset over Tradition's lake feels like home. The data draws the map. The people explain why it matters.